Soon you will be visiting the Dickson Mounds Museum. Here you will learn about American Indian people who have lived in Illinois for thousands of years. Dickson Mounds is a special place to learn about Indian culture because of where it is located and what has been learned here. The museum is on a bluff top that was occupied by Indian people many years ago. It overlooks the Illinois and Spoon River valleys, where Indians had their hunting and fishing camps, farms, villages, and ceremonial centers. Since there are no written records from people who lived around Dickson Mounds in the distant past, archaeologists and other scientists must work together and share the things they learn to better understand 12,000 years of environment and culture in Illinois. Like detectives, archaeologists study the lives of people from the clues they've left behind, such as the remains of their towns, temples, houses, tools, food, ornaments, and even their pottery. When ancient people broke their pottery, they sometimes reused the broken pieces, but often broken pots were viewed as trash and thrown away. Today, this trash is thought of as treasure by scientists who try to understand the lives of ancient peoples. While broken pottery may not be worth a lot of money, it is of great value because of the information it can provide about cultures of the past.
But what can we really learn from a container that's been thrown in the trash? Think about the things that are thrown away today and the different clues that this trash can reveal about our own present-day culture. A large quantity of juice boxes suggests that this is a popular drink. The colorful decoration and wording draws our attention, perhaps encouraging people to buy the product. Packages are not handmade, but produced all over the country, even the world. This was made in Dallas, Texas. So there must be a strong trade network in our culture. Foods are bought ready-made rather than made at home to save time, suggesting a fast-paced culture. Our containers are used only once, then thrown away, showing that we are a wasteful society. Just as these simple containers can reveal a great deal about our own culture, pottery containers are an important tool for learning about cultures of the past.
Archaeologists can learn about people who used the pottery by examining the clues in the containers, the materials, the shapes, the decorations, and the items in and around the pottery.
Yeah, pottery. For most archaeologists, pottery is really where it's at. First of all, it doesn't rot. Unlike items made of bone and shell and wood, when pottery is in the ground, it doesn't change for thousands of years. When the people making these pots broke them into pieces we call sherds, they pretty much didn't have any further use for them, so they just threw them away. For archaeologists, that means in our excavations, we can get information about how the pots were used by how they were thrown away. But most importantly to archaeologists, what pottery is good for is that the changes in shape and decoration tell us which peoples made it and when.
Just as we look at a cup decorated with Disney's cartoon Pocahontas and know it was made in the 1990s when the movie was released, archaeologists look at shapes and decorations on pottery as to clues on when it was made in the past.
Indian groups of different areas over thousands of years have made pottery in a wide variety of styles. So much pottery has been found and studied that archaeologists are able to divide the containers by style into different areas and periods of time. Now when pottery is found at a new archaeological site, the site can be dated by the type of pottery that is found. For almost 10,000 years, the Indians who lived in the Illinois River Valley did not make pottery. Big, heavy pottery would have been inconvenient for the Indians to carry in the earliest years, as they often lived in temporary villages and camps, moving with the seasons and following the animals they hunted. Before pottery came into use, people cooked and stored food in baskets, dried stomachs of animals, leather bags, woven bags, and wooden bowls. About 4,000 years ago, People began to grow gourds that they made into water bottles, dippers, bowls, and rattles.
Worldwide, pottery is one of the early people's most important discoveries. Pottery like this was being made as early as 7,000 years ago in Mesopotamia. By 5,000 years ago, pottery had spread to South America, and about 4,000 years ago, it spread to North America.
Around 3,000 years ago, people in the Midwest began to make pottery for cooking and storing foods, thus changing the way they use these foods. Pottery was more than an everyday household item that made life easier. It became a necessity of life and a way of expressing how people worked, lived, and believed. Pottery was not only used by people throughout their lives, but it was also used in death.
Most of us can't imagine what life would be like without computers, television, videotape recorders, cars. But imagine what life was like for early peoples before they had chipstone tools and ceramic containers. These inventions changed their life as much, if not even more, than modern inventions have today.
Pottery making was an important discovery for the American Indians for a number of reasons. The clay for making pottery was found all across North America. Because it was easily obtained, clay could be made into pottery quickly, at any time, and in large quantities. Once a pot was made, it was baked in a fire to permanently harden the clay. Fire-hardened clay was partially water-resistant. A pot could be made more water-resistant by applying various substances to the inside of the pot. Baked clay pots were stronger than containers made of plant fibers or animal skins and stomachs. Pottery bowls were better to cook in because they could be placed directly on a fire. This direct contact made it possible to heat foods and liquids to a higher temperature for boiling and stewing foods. By cooking in a container, fatty nutrients that would otherwise have cooked away in an open fire were saved, requiring less food to be needed. Also, pottery containers were better for storing foods than storage pits in the ground. It was easier to keep moisture, insects, and rodents out of a pottery container. Archaeologists believe that women made the pottery because they have found potter's tools buried with women and not men. Also, the first written accounts described pottery making as a woman's craft. The first pottery was thick, crude, and made in simple forms. These pots were made by a slab construction method. In this technique, clay is flattened out and cut into thick sheets. Then slabs are joined together by pressing and shaping them into a bowl with the aid of fabric pads. The early pottery of this area shows fabric impressions which were created as the slabs of clay were being shaped into a container. Shortly after pottery making began, Indian people started to cultivate gardens of marsh elder, sumpweed, and lamb's quarters, all plants which are considered weeds in today's fields. These plants produced large quantities of nutritious seeds that the Indians boiled in ceramic containers. Another food prepared in this way was hickory nuts. Cracked hickory nuts were boiled, causing the nut meats to separate from the shells. Boiling also extracted oils, which were especially nutritious and could be skimmed off the top of water and mixed with other foods. In addition to changes in cooking and using foods, people experimented with the pottery-making technology itself. Potters began to use two additional methods for making pottery, the pinch pot and coiling methods. The pinch pot method begins with a round ball of clay. A thumb impression is made in the center of the clay, and then the clay between the thumb impression and the outside of the clay ball is squeezed upward with the fingers to form the sides of the pot. Larger pots could be constructed by a method known as coiling. Coil pots are made by stacking coils of clay and pressing them together. Sometimes these coils were stacked on top of a pinch pot base. Slab pottery making methods were soon abandoned in favor of pinch pot and coiling methods because these latter methods produced thinner, more nicely formed pots. Throughout this evolution of pottery making processes, potters also tempered their clay. Tempering means to add a substance such as crushed stone, sand, or shell to the clay to make it stronger. Tempering helps to keep the pottery from shrinking and cracking as the clay dries, and helps prevent a pot from breaking when it is used for cooking over a hot fire. Once pottery was constructed, it was dried slowly, then fired. Drying pottery allows all moisture in the clay pot to evaporate or dry up. If a pot is baked while the clay is still moist, it will break. Unlike potters in other cultures, Illinois Indians did not bake their pottery in special ovens called kilns. They dug a shallow pit in the ground and started a fire in the center. When the wood had turned to hot coals, the pots were preheated around the edge of the fire. Preheating was important because placing a cool pot in an intensely hot fire could cause it to blow up. After the pots were heated, they were placed on the fire and more fire was built over and around them. Sometimes large broken pottery pieces were used to protect the vessels from the intense heat of direct contact with the burning wood. Pottery firing typically lasted 3 to 4 hours, with pots being allowed to slowly cool afterwards. Pottery was made in several different forms: bowls, jars, bottles, beakers, and plates. Each of these forms had a specific purpose, just as our pottery and containers have today. Bowl forms were not that different from bowls today. They had large wide mouths, curved bodies, and tapered bottoms. Bowls were used for serving food. Jars were similar to bowls in overall shape, with the exception of having higher rims, which were perhaps for tying on coverings. Some had handles. Jars were used for cooking and storing food or seeds. Water bottles were small or medium-sized containers with narrow necks. Their overall shape was similar to gourd water bottles used in earlier times. Beakers were a type of straight-sided cup with a short, stem-like handle attached on one side. Water bottles and beakers held liquids. Plates were large and probably used as platters to cool and serve food. A family would eat together from one large plate rather than from individual plates, as we do today. In addition to their everyday use, some of these containers were used in ceremonies to hold special foods and drinks. Pottery was decorated in a number of ways, with string, fabric, and carved stamps pressed into the clay, lines scratched into the clay with a sharp tool, and sometimes paint. Often the decorations were symbols of something in the natural world, such as the sun, water, and animals. These decorations might tell about a culture's beliefs and what was thought to be important. For example, animal effigies were ceramic containers shaped to look like an animal that had special meaning. The figures, such as ducks, found on effigy containers are symbols of things associated with the different worlds in ancient people's beliefs. Legends tell that American Indians believed in an upper world, which was the sky, heavens, sun, and clouds, this world where we live on the earth, and the lower world, a place beneath the earth and waters. Some animals were considered special spirits from each of these worlds, who could bring messages to people from sacred places, or guide people spiritually on journeys to other worlds. A Pawnee Indian ceremony quotes a duck as saying, "I am an unerring guide. I know all paths below and on the earth, and the water and above in the air." The arrival of the French explorers and traders in the 1680s changed Indian pottery making forever. The French brought brass and iron cooking kettles to Indian people. Metal containers could be heated better and could take more abuse. When metal pots were broken, the scraps were cut up and used to make ornaments to wear. Shortly after the French introduced brass and iron pots in Illinois, Indians stopped producing their own pottery containers. Today, archaeologists strive to preserve and record the cultural traditions of Indian people. Their knowledge of the pottery traditions of ancient cultures is made possible through the careful recording of where pottery and other artifacts are found, and through experimentation with ancient pottery-making tools and techniques. When artifacts such as pottery sherds are removed from a site without using proper scientific methods of study, their meaning and what they can tell us about the past is lost forever. Protection of our state's cultural resources is something in which everyone can be involved. Archaeologists at Dickson Mounds were able to help area students piece together an important discovery they made. When these students found large pottery sherds, they contacted Dickson Mounds to report their find. With the students' help, the museum staff was able to record the ancient site where the sherds were found and help put the sherds together to form this large storage pot made over 2,000 years ago. While this pot may have been trash on the beach, it is treasure in the museum. It is the largest pottery vessel on exhibit. During your museum visit, you will see the pottery used by Indian cultures in the Illinois River Valley, and you will experiment with methods of pottery making. But the museum is a place to which you can return throughout your life to learn many things about life ways in the past and the science of archaeology.